Hello friends, Tal here, and welcome to a brand new video. Today I wanted to take a second to talk about a couple of issues that I've recently had come up in regards to Blizzard and the way they've been kind of going about the Legion expansion. And I'm going to go ahead and just talk about a couple of things real quick, give kind of my examples as to why I feel like it's a problem, but also use some sort of other examples from other Blizzard games and how they're kind of updating and moving along with the system a little bit faster than I think Blizzard is doing with WoW. And I know that's very vague, and I'll give some better examples in a little bit, but this is all basically coming around from me spending some time on the PTR. I'm getting ready to do basically a 7.1.5 coverage of the tank specs. That's for the patch that's coming up. Reminder that this patch is a PTR patch. Things might be changing. This isn't scheduled to come out until like January or something, so we still have at least a month. So it's not like something that's coming out immediately, but I wanted to go ahead and take care of the changes now so that then I can just cover whatever minute changes are happening with PTR patch notes and things like that. With all that being said though, I want to go ahead and start this off by saying that these gripes that I have with the direction and handling of WoW, they only exist because Blizzard as a company has shown different treatment towards their different games, which of course is normal, is fine. Obviously not every game. Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm are not the same beast that WoW is. Their competitive scene is much bigger, their player base is much more varied and different, and it's arguable that yes, for those games, changes need to be made much more quickly because they affect very competitive tournaments and things that are going on all around the world on a scale that WoW at this point honestly doesn't anymore. WoW is a game that's way past its prime. It's still very enjoyable, still a lot of fun. But if you have to choose between one and the other, it makes sense to put a lot more attention towards games like Overwatch and things like that. Now, I want to point out that I'm not bitching, right? I'm not complaining. I'm not crying, oh, they're not paying attention to WoW, what made them anything like that. No. My criticism is more levied at the fact that there are times when I feel that Blizzard is very, very stubborn, exceedingly stubborn. They've always been this way as a game company. But playing Heroes of the Storm, playing Overwatch, I see more and more and more that while they might be a little more lenient in some other games, in WoW they still maintain this level of stubbornness that is toxic almost to a point, if I'm being completely honest. And it's very frustrating for me as a fan, as a player of all these games, to feel like in one game I'm treated one way and in another I'm treated better. And it's from the same company. Finally, to kind of just tie all this together and explain why I feel this way, if you look at the season format for games such as Heroes of the Storm or Overwatch, it's a much quicker turnabout that is actively taking changes coming in. The season, the skill rating change in Overwatch has pretty much gone up and down every single time that a new season has come out. And in Heroes of the Storm, they've made changes to the way that you queue into Hero League, queue into Team League. They're making updates about every week or so, like updates to heroes, changing things here and there, tweaking things, changing talents, overhauls, all that kind of stuff. They're very active in their involvement, which in a MOBA is obviously very, very important. I don't fault them at all. And I think in Overwatch, it can also be said that they're much more receptive to changing things more quickly, or at least letting us know about upcoming changes and things that they know are a problem. Hook from Roadhog is one of the examples of a change that they know is a problem, that they're working on, that hasn't changed just yet, that we've known is a problem for a long time, but that they're actively working on, and we can feel good that, it's coming. They're going to be doing these things. Another example I want to use is the Summer Games loot box. That was originally something you could only earn with money. The Halloween loot box you could actually earn through normal loot boxes. When you would earn a normal loot box through leveling up, it would be Halloween. You could purchase the skins and the emotes and the sprays and all that kind of stuff with gold during the Halloween seasonal event. So you can see right there, there's already been a kind of little uptake in the way that they've done things. Yes, this is events and money, and it's not quite the same as what I'm going to be talking about with WoW, but it shows a willingness to open up and change a little bit more when it comes to these games in order to please their audience. So how does this all relate to WoW? And I know I'm stretching a little bit here when I'm trying to pull together these points, But basically, I think that Blizzard has done a phenomenal job with Legion. The expansion has been fantastic. I've been having a ton of fun. I think so many interesting, intelligent ideas will be thrown in here. But you also have these things that are weighing down the expansion. And I'm not talking minor weights. I'm talking just dragging it down, drowning. All the good ideas in the world cannot save it from itself. And we're going to be talking about those points now. First off, the artifacts. One of the biggest fun but also controversial things in this expansion. I want to start off by saying that artifact knowledge is a fantastic thing. I love the fact that over time, artifact knowledge is going to be increasing my artifact power gains. It's going to be getting those points a lot easier. And I love the change coming into the patch of 7.1.5 that allows you to purchase artifact knowledge levels for your ults, or purchase it on those characters with not garrison, but class order resources. I think it's a fantastic idea. If you're, say, artifact level 20, you could purchase up to 15. It's not quite the same thing as having it at the same level, but it's close enough that it makes it feel rewarding that you've been playing your character the entire time, but it also doesn't make you feel useless on your ults. I wish it would be account-wide, but you can't have everything you want. And this is a point where I think it's okay to kind of have that separation from what I want versus what the developers want to give us time to go ahead and grind out and do things. I think having 5 or so levels below your main's artifact level is perfectly reasonable. It's fine. So I actually like that change. That is a good change that's coming to the game in the next patch. Now, a bad change that's going to be coming to the game eventually, they haven't said when, is that they're planning on adding new artifact traits. Now, I understand why they want to add them. Artifact traits are supposed to be something that's expansion-wide. You're always going to be working towards it. Otherwise, artifact power is useless. But quite frankly, I think adding new traits and new levels to traits, not only does it become a scaling nightmare because you're adding all these extra percentages to abilities. For example, in the case of my Guardian Druid, or do they really want to add 10% more damage to Thrash and make it 60-70% damage to Thrash when you think about the relics that have 2 traits and everything else that'll be happening? It kind of gets a little numbers wise, and frankly I just don't think it's fun. I already think it's a pain in the butt that when you get your 35th point, it's a thing that you basically just keep putting points into, millions and millions and millions of points, and it increases your armor, your damage, your healing by 1 additional percent or something like that. I already don't like that. I think that the 35th point could have just been the last point and just end it, because there's a certain level of satisfaction to knowing that you're finished with a weapon. There's a certain level of satisfaction knowing that, okay, I'm done. I put in all the work. I put in all the effort. This is done now. I don't have to worry about it. I understand that long term, that would mean that artifact power would be useless to you. A large portion of the content in the game would be immediately shut off, and it would be a problem. But this is a problem that's been generated by them, by design. The reason this is a problem by design is that, frankly, artifact power should have been a character-wide thing that you have a big bank of, and you can spend it on each of your specs weapons as you see fit. Yes, I understand they wanted you to invest into one spec because of class fantasy and just having, really dedicating yourself to something. But I think that in the long term, it's created something that is frankly just not fun. As a tank, I have 1 tank spec on each character. I don't have a problem with being a mage that needs to be fire 1 patch, arcane the next. I don't have a problem of being a healer like a priest and having to decide between holy or discipline, even though they both have their uses in different situations. But I do have the problem that sometimes I just want to go DPS. Sometimes we don't need another tank. Sometimes I'd like to just go and relax and do something. And I have to tell you, there's a big difference between running around in a DPS spec with an artifact that's level 1 and an artifact that at least has 2 gold traits. Playing Feral, trying to get my world quest done to get in the unlock the hidden artifact skin for my Bear Druid, that was a big pain in the butt until I put enough points into it that I started to feel like the spec was rotating its tires. It was going. It was feeling like it was supposed to feel. And don't make any mistake, your class is not technically complete until you have all those artifact points, until your class is working, your spec is working exactly the way it was designed. Now, honestly, although I complain about this, it is a little too late for this problem. I think that personally they should have made each point more expensive than it is now, but make it a pool of artifact power so that you can spend it however you want on each of your specs. You don't have to do this super annoying resetting your artifact power, spending all your artifact power to do this, and if you invest in one spec, you're screwed with the other one. That's not a fun thing. I understand the intention. Long term, you need to have stuff to do. I get it. But you design something that isn't fun, and my biggest frustration and anger point for this is we told you it wasn't fun. We told you from the beginning it wasn't fun. We explained to you when you announced it at BlizzCon, when you had it in the beta, all throughout the cycle, the beginning of the expansion, we've been telling you this isn't fun. This isn't fun. And it's a difference of, oh, this is hard, or oh, this is clunky, or oh, this is, some people think this is fun, some people don't think this is fun. Not necessarily think this is fun, this is not fun. Like, some people might be okay with it, but overall, when you have such a diverse amount of specs on one class, because each class has at least 2 Demon Hunters 2, but everyone else has like 3 Druids at 4, it's not a fun thing to do to people. It's not, especially not when the entire game you've had this option of playing all the different specs and really enjoying the class as a whole. And as much as you want to say class fantasy, we have order holes for a class, not for a spec, and you're putting shackles on us for no reason. It's been a very frustrating thing for me, this expansion. Yes, with artifact knowledge levels and higher AP, and once you get to your capped out artifacts and everything, it doesn't become a problem. But going into the expansion at the beginning, it's such a not fun thing to have to deal with. I struggle to understand why, even though we explained issues with this system, it went forward anyways and it wasn't addressed. To be honest, that is something that I think would be very difficult to fix, but if they wanted to just go back and say, okay, you can use your artifact power on all your artifacts, or we're going to increase every single trait or every single point after the 35th point from this point forward, but you can use your artifact power on all the different specs and relics and everything, I think that would be better. It might be a little bit too difficult. It might not be mechanically okay. I mean, they can't figure out how to make the backpack be bigger, so who knows at this point, but it is a problem that I have with Blizzard because throughout the entire development process of the beta, mind you, just the beta, not when they were actually making Legion, but this is something that should have and could have changed. And I don't understand why it didn't. I don't understand why our feedback when it comes to these things is so shunted and just kind of ignored, honestly. Another thing that is causing issues with these artifact traits, is one of the reasons I bring this up, is the class changes. Now, I have to admit, and give credit where credit is due, it is very good that they did not make big sweeping class changes until this point, 7.1.5. It almost seems like it was mapped out. By the point that this patch comes out in January, we will have gotten to such a level of artifact power that if you had to switch from a fire mage to a frost mage or an arcane mage, it wouldn't be entirely unreasonable. By this point, most people have the 35th point. You can start putting, artifact power into your other weapons. It's not an entirely unreasonable thing in a nutshell, in itself, and it's in a vacuum. Combined with the next point that I'm going to be talking about, which is legendaries, that doesn't really work out so well. But as a whole, I think the class changes, waiting until this point to do them, has been a decent thing. But you still have the issues that these class changes are going to make people switch specs. And after you've invested this much time, energy, and effort into your fire mage, I just keep using mage as an example because it has 3 DPS specs, and they just happen to be receiving some changes. But if you've been having all this time and effort put into a spec, and then they make changes that not necessarily nerf your spec, but make another one better, and you want to play that other spec, you now have to deal with getting to that 35th point again, trying to get legendaries for it, trying to gear yourself out to go ahead and do these things, and it can be really, really tone deaf, I think, in a point, to combine these class changes along with the artifact powers, the artifact system, making it so rigid and unable to be compromised. I think that's just going along with the traits, the fact that there's going to be new traits, the fact that the artifact power is not shared, and how annoying it's all been dealing with, especially if you level an alt now and you don't have artifact knowledge, even though it's getting fixed next patch. If you were to level 1 right now, you'd be basically useless. There'd be no point in you existing, honestly. Gear is not anywhere near as high of an effect on your DPS, your tank, and your healing as the artifact points are. And that brings me to legendaries. The biggest thing I have with legendaries is that it's impossible to fix it. They cannot fix it this expansion. You cannot take the legendaries away. You cannot make all the legendary effects only utility. I think it would drive people insane. It would piss them off, and it wouldn't be productive to a positive future for the Legion expansion going forward. Because remember, we're not even halfway. We're like a third of the way into Legion, so there's a lot left to the expansion, and that would just be a very negative thing to happen in the middle of it. But that doesn't mean add more. Who in their right mind, knowing how annoying legendaries have been for this community, knowing that there was a bunch of BlizzCon questions asked about legendaries that were kind of brushed aside and ignored, who in their right mind thought it would be a good idea to bring more legendaries? Change the legendaries that exist? That's fine. That's perfectly fine. Bring more in? What? When people already don't have all the legendaries that exist for their spec? When people have legendaries that are, for example, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure hunters have 2 different belts for 2 different specs, right? So if you have a marksman belt and then you have like a beast mastery belt, they're completely useless unless you have the right one for the right spec. And if you're switching specs for any reason during the expansion, you could have the best legendaries for marksman, and then all of a sudden you have to play BM, you have nothing. You have just a big shiny 910 orange stat stick. Who in their right mind didn't think, hey, let's just make a legendary belt and it changes based on your spec? Why? I don't know. Make it a DPS spec, tri-spec exclusive, per pure DPS so that they have a little bit of an easier time. It's not as big of a deal for them. Or hey, do it for everybody. Make everyone have legendaries that change based on their spec. Would that really be so crazy? Would that really be so anti-consumer, anti-gamer, anti-fun? Can you just have a legendary Death Knight cloak, the Cloak of Arthas or whatever the hell, that changes its effect based on whether you're Frost, Unholy, and Blood? That way, no matter what spec you're in, you don't feel like it's a wasted slot. That way, you can have fun. But to add more, and to add grossly overpowered trinkets, the demon trinkets, the one for tanking that does the shield and then the explosion, and then the DPS one that just makes like a cataclysm appear, like what is the thinking? What is the... I struggle to understand why you continue to make a broken system worse. Blizzard, you as a company, you have to know, alone, some of these things would be fine. But you're throwing all these things in with Warforged, Titanforged gear, with random sockets and other things that you're just kind of throwing in a mixer, blending all together, and you're making frustration. Yes, from time to time, someone can have this amazing, crazy loot luck that just everything rolls perfect, everything rolls great, and they have a fun time. But for the majority of the player base, you're just creating frustration. You're giving it a physical form. What is already broken, what is already has issues, you're making worse on purpose, and you know it's a point of contention because you ignore questions about it, or you just won't talk about it anymore. People are not happy in the community, and you're just antagonizing them. Why? Why do you do this? Ultimately, I think that, again, the artifact knowledge change is good. That's very alt-friendly. It's good for the gamers. It's good for consumers. It's going to be fun. The whole bringing in new traits, not so great. Why can't people just have a sense of satisfaction of having it done? I understand that maybe making a big pool of artifact power wouldn't really work because then everyone would be done with artifact power 1/3 into the expansion. I get that that's an issue. It's a scaling problem. People have just been spamming Mythic Plus dungeons to get all the artifact power they need, but admittedly, that's not their fault. They're playing the game as you designed. You guys should have listened a little bit more to feedback and built a stronger system, a better cohesion to it so to not create this problem for yourself. But fine, maybe it's not as easy to fix. Maybe you can't just go and flip a switch to fix the artifact power system. And legendaries, you can't take away, you can't entirely change, but don't add more. And I know you're going to add more in the next patch, in the Argus patch. I know you will. I know it's going to happen. You're going to keep adding legendaries this entire expansion because you're already in it and you can't stop. And all of this together makes me so apprehensive about Nighthold. So apprehensive. We're going into that raid, which is technically going to be the middle-ish of Legion, with people already hitting crazy caps on their secondary stats, which are being rolled back already because they're getting to ridiculous levels. But we're going to be reaching this point of Nighthold with, frankly, let me backtrack a little bit. Trial of Valor was overtuned as shit. Okay, it was crazy overtuned, but it was because of what people were doing. You were expected going into Trial of Valor Mythic to have your 35th point. Okay, you just were expected to have it because that's what would let you be competitive. And frankly, bosses like Warm were designed around every DPS having that point because it was a crazy DPS check. So you go into Mythic Trial of Valor, which is overtuned, has some buggy encounters, whatever. You're expected to have this 35th point. You're expected to have 2 legendaries on each of your raiders, if at all possible. Good legendaries on top of that. And now we're going into Nighthold. With, frankly, everyone's going to have amazing gear. Everyone's going to have, or the top people, quotation marks, are going to be expected to be able to have multiple legendaries to rotate in and out. Who knows if you're... Okay, so we're going to hit the 25th artifact knowledge rank before Nighthold, right? Going into by the time this patch releases, it'll probably be 23, 24, maybe even 25 artifact knowledge. And as far as I'm aware, that's the highest level of artifact knowledge you're going to get to. At that point, you won't get any more. That'll be the cap. And that's when people are going to smash their faces against mythic dungeons like there's no tomorrow. And all that's going to happen is Nighthold's going to release. And I don't want to say this for sure and put my name out there, but I'm pretty sure you're going to be expected to have a capped artifact going into that. That is the midpoint of the expansion. Is that really healthy? Is that really what you want people to be doing? 54 points into your artifact to raid Nighthold? And the problem is, it's not that they're expected to do it. It's that if you didn't do it in Trial of Valor, you didn't compete. So who's to say Nighthold isn't going to be super overtuned to have that, to the point where you can't do a lot of the bosses because you don't have a capped out artifact on all your raid team. Like these are the things that are kind of swirling around in my mind because they have to balance gear, they have to balance legendaries, they have to balance these crazy artifact powers, artifact trait levels, and these paragon points and the crazy combinations of everything going together. Not to mention tier sets. Oh yeah, another power boost. It's very frustrating for me to think about all these things that are going to be coming out at the same time, mixing together, creating a mess, when 3 boss raid is more difficult than the entire Emerald Nightmare raid, which was undertuned, so then they overtuned, and that's the problem with Blizzard. They either under or they overtuned. There's never a middle thing. They just they shoot too high or they shoot too low. Either way, they miss the mark. And chances are they're going to shoot too high to extend the content out and make it a little bit better, because frankly Trial of Valor was a better raid, but it sets a dangerous precedent, and it's very frustrating for me. Again, I kind of want to tie this all back to what I started saying with Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm. I wish Blizzard, when it came to WoW, were more receptive to listening. I wish they were a little bit quicker on the draw to change some things that they can see are problems. I wish that we could tell them, hey, this legendary thing, it's not going to work out. Please make it all utility, please. Or, hey, these artifact power, investing all of it into one weapon, not being able to use it in other weapons, that's kind of not fun. Can you just let us have fun? And it's all subjective, okay? Everything I'm saying is an opinion. You have to understand, there's going to be someone out there that's like, fuck you, I have DPS legendaries and they're super fun, and maybe they're not a raider, maybe they're just a person that logs on and does casual stuff, or maybe they're a pet battler and they're just rocking the world and they have the best gear in the world and they're doing Mythic Plus dungeons only. My opinion does not constitute the opinion of the entire community. It's just my opinion, but I feel like a lot of people might agree with this opinion, which is why I'm voicing it. And more than anything, it's just something that, as I've been thinking about what I'm going to be doing in the future with my tanks, with PTR testing, to go ahead and give you the 7.1.5 guides, it was frustrating me, and I wanted to get it all out and kind of explain my thought process about this, because that's really what the channel is about, talking about tanks, talking about thought process, just the way I view the game. And I wanted to get these opinions expressed out to you guys and see what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. What do you guys think about all this? Do you think these changes are going to be good? Do you think it's going to add more excitement to the game? Or do you honestly think that it's just kind of a pain in the ass and you don't really want to deal with it? Let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and drop it a like. You can subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content just like this. And I want to thank the time each and every single one of you took out of your day to go ahead and watch this, as well as a very special thank you to my Patreon patrons who continue to make this dream a reality through their monthly continued support. If you'd like to go ahead and become a Patreon patron, you can go ahead and click right there on the logo. It'll take you right to the page. And other than that, you can go ahead and tweet me or follow me at Tauriel here on Twitter. And I hope you guys have a wonderful, fantastic day. See you guys around.
Turns to gray, we'll calmly walk away from the fray. When structure falls and all else fails,